Hey everyone, welcome to the show. My name is Sam Shaw and I'm the founder of Wall Street Mastermind. This is Wall Street Mastermind's Elevate program, where we take our flagship coaching program and give it away for free to high potential students who are currently in a difficult financial situation. The goal of this show is to first and foremost give these students the coaching and guidance that they wouldn't be able to get otherwise and help them break into investment banking. Of course, we also want to give all of you an in-depth look at how to go about your own investment banking preparation process the right way, so that you can model it after the same proven methodology and strategies that we've used to place over 90% of our students into investment banking across every single bulge bracket and elite boutique bank over the last several years. With hundreds of thousands of applicants competing to break into investment banking globally each year, our team only has the bandwidth to help a very small percentage of you. So my hope is that this show helps all of you, even if you aren't able to directly participate in our program and work with us. So let's get to it. In this session, we start working on Ximena's behavioral answers by giving her feedback on what we call the guaranteed questions. These questions include: 1, tell me about yourself or walk me through your resume. 2, why investment banking? And 3, why our bank, using JP Morgan as an example. These are usually the first and most important questions that get asked in any interview, so it's crucial to knock these questions out of the park if you hope to get an offer. All right, cool. So we're back today for the fourth session. I think I'm starting to lose track, but fourth session with Ximena, and today we're going to be going over her behavioral answers, or at least part of her behavioral answers. The context is Ximena has a higher view coming up for one of the sophomore diversity programs that she's applying to, which we kind of talked about last time. So it's good to see that she's taking action on that front. And so in terms of preparing for the higher view, I know, Ximena, you were asking about kind of how to go about preparing for it, right? Or you're kind of nervous because it's your first higher view and you kind of don't really know what to expect, right? I think, for whatever reason, it being a higher view always throws people off and makes them more nervous. But in reality, it's really no different than just an actual interview, right? I think that's the first thing that I want to say is you just treat it like any other interview. And instead of having an actual banker, say the question to you, they just have it on the computer, right? But the way you answer that question shouldn't really be any different, right? And I think people are for whatever reason anxious because they don't know what question is going to be asked on the higher view. You also don't really know what question is going to get asked when you interview with an actual banker. You're just going in and you hopefully have an answer prepared for the exact questions that they're going to ask. And a lot of times the questions are kind of predictable, which is it's usually the questions that we have in our behavioral questionnaire or some variation of it, right? It might not be verbatim, but it's usually if you read between the lines, it's asking you kind of the same thing, right? So you can typically recycle a lot of those answers that we're going to be preparing, or at least just adapt it slightly, right? Now, I think the benefit to a higher view compared to a real interview is that most of the time they do use the same questions for everybody. And so depending on, the situation, you may or may not be able to find out what the questions are ahead of time, right? So obviously the first thing I would do is, go ask the people in Wall Street Mastermind, just go in the Slack channel, and you see people do this all the time, right? Has anyone taken the higher view for XYZ firm, right? I would be more specific when you ask, though. I would say has anyone taken the higher view for, you should tell them what firm, what program it is. In this case, it's the sophomore program, so it's different from the junior summer internship program that most people are usually recruiting for, right? I would also tell them what year, is this summer 2022, summer 2023? I think for this it's summer 2022, right? So it would be the firm, summer 2022, sophomore diversity program. And then sometimes I would even list location. But by location, it's not New York versus SF, but like someone earlier today was asking the Slack channel if anyone has done the hire review for JP Morgan, but he was actually he was actually asking about London, but he didn't specify London, and like different continents will typically have different questions. Right? So you just want to be as specific as you can, because otherwise someone might respond and say, "Oh yeah, I know the questions. It's this, this, and this, and this." And then you go in expecting those questions, and it's actually totally different questions, and you're completely thrown off, right? So that's the first place you can check. The second place I would say is like, um, this is one of the things that Wall Street Oasis I think can be good for sometimes, which is like, I have seen people share higher view questions on there before. They don't always,
Yeah.
but like, because it is competitive, right? And like sometimes people want to kind of like keep the questions to themselves, and also like the only people that can share are people who have already taken it, and if they've already taken it, they're like, well, why would I want to help other people, right? And so you may or may not find anything there, but it doesn't hurt to look, and if you don't see any existing threads, it doesn't hurt to like just create one and just try your luck, right? um Other than that, like, that's like the first thing is like, if you can figure out what the questions are ahead of time, then you can actually, prepare the answers for those exact questions. And then of course, we can give you feedback on those answers. You would practice it before you actually go into it, right? If you can't figure it out, then I would say, then the approach is just like any other interview you prepare for, which is you don't know the questions ahead of time, but like the way we designed the behavioral questionnaire is like we try to cover almost like all the common questions that you could typically get in the interview anyway, right? So then it's just even more. I don't know when you have to take this higher view by. We should try to finish your questionnaire before that, and
Yeah.
and give you feedback on all the answers, and then you would just practice all of your answers, and then just keep in mind that, hey, when they ask you a certain question during the higher view, like I said earlier, it might not be verbatim, right? So like if they ask, for example, uh, they might ask like, you know, why should we hire you out of all the candidates? We don't have that exact question in the questionnaire, but we do have a question about like, what are your three greatest strengths, right? And then so like those are basically asking you the same things, right? Or they might ask you, I don't know, what's another example? Like they might ask you, for example, like, hey, tell me about a time uh, that you had to, I don't know, overcome a setback or overcome a challenge, right? And that might be the same thing as maybe the example you prepared for a time when you had to work with someone that was really difficult, right? I mean, technically, those are not like those two aren't like identical questions, but you could probably use the same answer, or at least like very similar answers from like the same story, right? Or like, tell me about a time when you worked in a team could be the exact same example as tell me about a time when you demonstrated leadership, right? Because maybe you were the one leading that team, right? Like, so my point is like, once you have these answers prepared from the questionnaire, even if you get a question that wasn't what you expected or seems like a curveball question, like the first step, because they usually give you, I don't know, like depending on the firm, but I think for higher view questions, they give you like some prep time before you actually answer each question, right? I think it's anywhere from probably like 30 seconds to 2 minutes, right? Um, that you can definitely probably find out. Just like if you just ask online, like, hey, how many minutes does XYZ firm give you for your higher view questions? Like people usually at least tell you that, right? But during that prep time, like the methodology for any questions that you haven't thought of is, one, think through your kind of like your lists of answers, your stories that you prepared, and try to identify the one that's like the most similar to it, or the one that can be most easily adapted, right? And then the second step is like, when you're filling out the questionnaire, like we tell you guys to use like frameworks, right? Which is like we kind of give you almost like a formula, like first talk about this and talk about this and talk about this and talk, like we don't tell you exactly what to say, but like spark outline, or like, have 3 reasons and then like signposts and whatever. So identify like the framework that goes along with that question. And then that basically gives you the outline, right? And then I think the hardest part about the higher view is actually almost like having to think on your feet a little bit and feeling like you have to answer on the spot without messing up. But if you have the example you want to use, and if you have the outline, like, oh, I need to go SPARK or whatever the framework is, then just like kind of quickly outline what you want to say based on the 5-part framework or 3-part framework in your head. And then that's your outline, right? That's your mental outline. And then as you're going through and answering the question, just follow the outline, right?
Yeah.
And that's really probably like the best way to do it. And if you want to take a step further, you can like maybe practice doing this type of exercise impromptu.
For sure.
So
Yeah.
like just come up with a list of questions, but you can take it from like any of the interview guides or whatever. And then just go through this methodology that I just talked about, where it's like, okay, if it's this question, like which of the stories that I prepare will I use? What is the framework for that? And then try to like verbalize it, right? And record yourself doing it. Since it's a higher view, like record yourself. You can use Zoom, you can use Loom, there's a lot of different things out there that allow you to record yourself and then watch it afterwards, right? And then also that way you know how long your answer is from the recording, which is important because you want to make sure they're within the time limit. And then also you can, when you watch it, you can be like, be your own toughest critic and try to like pick out every little thing you're doing that you don't like, right? Oh, I don't like the way I keep like looking in this direction, or oh, I don't like the way that my voice inflection is this, or whatever. I mean, and you can also send those clips to us and get our feedback on it, and we can probably identify some things that maybe you might not identify. But like that's kind of how I would go about it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure. Yes, thank you. Yeah, I think my biggest thing is just definitely, I think that Spark outline. I think for the other half of the behaviorals, it's a lot more because it's about like your strengths. So you have to make more of a story for each one. Because I feel like for me, a lot of times I just have a lot of things in my head and I have a hard time organizing my ideas. That's, I think, my weakness, organizing my ideas when I'm thinking of too many things. And I'll overthink it. For example, I think we had a diversity event. I told you I was asking questions and I just overthought all the questions that we've gone through the program. And I think there were like 15 people or more. There were like 100 people, like 15 people were waiting to ask questions. And I was like 14th in line. But because I was like the only girl, they called on me. And I freaked out. I asked my question, but I freaked out. And I think they could tell.
Yeah.
And it was so embarrassing. It was so embarrassing. I was really like, wow. I tried following up and they answered me afterwards, but I really thought it was over. I was like, this is the worst first impression. They called on me. But yeah, so it's just definitely that.
No, I mean, it sounds like you're kind of getting into your own head a little bit, right? I think you're, and people do this a lot where because we're giving you so much information and we're giving you so much to think about, like in terms of like, oh, here are all the best practices and whatever. And some people have a tendency to overthink it, right? And then it's almost like then you become kind of robotic because you're trying to juggle all these things. Like, oh, I want to make sure I do this, but I don't do this, and I got to do this, but not do this. And it's just like that's almost like it'll paralyze you. And so I think if you find that you're doing that, then you almost want to just like be yourself more and relax a bit more and just kind of like throw some of that stuff out the window, right?
Yeah.
Because then it's actually not helping you anymore, you know?
No.
So but I think like look, it just also comes with repetition. It comes to
Yeah.
like the more you do something, the more comfortable you're gonna become at it. So in this case, like if you feel like you're the type that's gonna be really nervous when you're doing it for the first time, then definitely make sure that when you record your actual higher view answers, that is not the first time you're doing this. Right?
Yeah.
So does that make sense?
Yes, for sure. That was that. And I think my last question on the hire review, the emails don't give me a timeline. So it's, of course, it's based on when you turn in your application. So I turned it in like 5 hours after it opened. But they said that, so my email came and there's no timeline for when the hire review is, but the email came Monday. And today they sent a reminder because I was thinking I will go through like the second half because they don't do the interviews until December. And they said applications close like November 14th. I thought I'd have more time. So I had thought like Monday, I'll send you the set by Monday, you'll have the second half, but they send me a reminder today. So I was thinking, do you think I should reach out to them and ask, or like
Yeah, is there an email you can reply to where you
about
can?
the timeline? Yeah,
Yeah, because like sometimes the email address they're sending it from can actually be replied to and people actually read it. And sometimes it'll say like, please do not reply to this email because no one actually monitors this email. It's just like an automated email, right?
yeah,
But I would try to reach out to someone there and ask them like, hey, what's the actual deadline that I have to complete this by, just so you know, right? I
yeah,
think honestly, I don't know why they don't tell you when to complete it by. I think they should have done that, but
yeah.
you know,
That's what I did, and even in the email today, it didn't say anything either. I've emailed them before because they were having problems with the sign up, but I'm guessing there's a lot of them. I don't think anyone will be like, this is the girl that's emailing us constantly, and that's a terrible question.
are you emailing them constantly though? I
No,
mean,
I wasn't. I just emailed them once when they had a problem with the opening the applications because they were delayed.
yeah, and they responded to that.
Yes.
Okay, so you at least have that email, right? So
Yeah.
you know someone's checking that email address. I don't know if it's the same email,
Yeah.
but I think asking when you had to complete this by is not a bad thing. In fact, once you get into banking, you're gonna get assigned a lot of different projects. One of the first questions I always ask every time I get staffed on something, when do you need this by?
Yeah.
That's just like good practice because in banking, you're gonna be juggling different things. And if you don't know what the deadline is, you're not gonna be able to prioritize accordingly. Right. So I like my point is I don't think anyone's gonna say like, oh, I can't believe she's asking when this is due. Like that's not a it's a good question.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So I will find out. Just so we know what we're working against. Right.
Okay.
Cool. So let's go through some of these actual answers that you sent over, and just in the interest of time, I'm gonna instead of like rewriting some of these sentences for you, which is what we would typically do a lot of times. That takes like a really long time though. Like I'm just gonna give you like the high level verbal feedback, and then of course like you're gonna have this recording, and then I also jot down some like pretty light notes just so you remember what we talked about. But you can always go back and watch a recording and then see like what else, like basically make the next round of changes and polish it up, and then like we can always take another look at it. Okay.
Okay.
So I'm gonna start with at the top. So tell me about yourself, walking through your resume. Obviously, like this is one of the most important questions, right? So I'm a sophomore at NYU Shanghai, studying economics and finance. Quick thing here, I don't know what's on your resume. Do you put NYU
Right.
Shanghai or NYU?
So yeah, I should take the Shanghai off.
Okay. So if you just put NYU, then I would just go with NYU, right?
Okay.
I'm from Colombia, moved to the US when I was 10. That's all fine. Growing up with immigrant parents, I saw them work long hours every day to support our family. As an only child, this has always pushed me to have a high work ethic. I would say, um, I don't know, high. I don't know if high is like the right adjective in this case. I would probably say um, strong work ethic, right? Strong work ethic and really value education. Hopes one day being the one who's supporting them. My dad was also in sales and always talking to me about profit. I remember selling lollipops in Lemon in elementary school as my first experience and enjoying a few dollars I thought would make me a millionaire. However, I feel like the topic of money was always a taboo at home, but I learned to recognize early on that money was a vehicle to do things you wanted. So This section here, I feel like um is a bit long,
Yeah.
and also like, the thing that I always tell people to ask themselves is like, just read every sentence in your answer and ask yourself, okay, what is the purpose of this sentence? Like, what am I trying to convey? What value is this adding to my story? And do I need to have this? Right. So it's like, sophomore NYU studying econ and finance, like, okay, yeah, like that passes that test, right? From Columbia, moved to the US when I was 10, growing up with immigrant parents, I saw more long hours. Like, okay, this is all fine, right? Because this, I think, like, this is just like a unique identifier for yourself. Like, you're that girl who grew up in Columbia. That's how people are going to remember you. And also, you're impressing upon them that, you have a strong work ethic as like an immigrant, like the child of an immigrant. Okay, got it. Then, like, starting here, I think maybe what you're trying to do here is um talking about like the spark, maybe, right? This is like the spark of how you became interested in finance, but I think it just wasn't done as well as it could have been, right? So, for example, my dad was also into sales and will always talk to me about profit. Like, this sentence, I feel like is a little bit weird, right? Like, sales and profit, like, it's all they're both part of like business, but I don't know, right? I might say like my dad was, instead of also into sales, I might say like my dad was a businessman and would always talk to me about uh, his work um, from a young age or something, right? Um, and then like I remember selling a lot of houses. Like, this is like, okay, cool. This is kind of like cool little story. Feel like the topic of money was always taboo at home. Like, this sentence, I think was the most out of place because I wasn't sure like what point you're trying to make here.
Yeah.
Like, it doesn't, or maybe you can explain to me, but to me, when I read this, I feel like it doesn't really add anything, right?
Yeah. So I think so for me, I think that's one of the things that I would say is one of my motivations for finance. It's just because it was never a topic and I always felt like it was something so important. So that's what I was kind of trying to put. It was just never like finance is not something that's in any way like at home, something we talk about. You don't really talk about money. It's like, I don't know how to explain it, but that's what like got me to also just be so curious about it, if that makes sense. So
Yeah,
I was trying to work my way into that somehow, but I also never mentioned it again,
right.
I think. So would you
Yeah,
say
it's kind of interesting because like this part would kind of
say the
imply
opposite?
that your dad does talk to you about money, right?
Wow.
He's talking to you about like making profits, and then like you were very entrepreneurial from a young age and you had your own like lollipop and lemonade stand and you made money
Yeah.
from that, right? And so it kind of almost is like contradictory. Like, you first painted this one picture of like
Yeah.
your dad is very encouraging on like the business and money side, and then there's
Yeah.
this other sentence. I think that's why this felt out of place because I was, huh, like what? Like, you don't talk about money?
Yeah.
What do you mean, right? So, um, I also think like if your point is just to say that that's what got you interested in finance, like we could get the we could get the spark, get your spark across even without that, right?
Yeah.
Even if I just deleted that and I
Yeah.
just said, remember selling live house limited elementary school as my first experience and enjoying the first few dollars I thought would make me a millionaire. I learned to recognize early on that money was a vehicle to do things that you wanted, right? Like,
I didn't know when I read it back, I didn't know if like that last one was really necessary. I feel like it's common sense now.
yeah. Um, I think maybe like to do things you wanted maybe is a little bit uh,
Yeah.
obvious, but maybe it's like um maybe like you can tie it back to banking by saying, because this is kind of like, you running your own business, so to speak, right? And then so you can say, I learned to recognize early on that, um, you know, uh, money or capital is the lifeblood of any business you try to run, right? Like, for
Mhm.
example, like to be able to sell lollipops or sell lemonade, you got to first have money to be able to buy
Mhm.
your inventory or buy the lemons and the equipment and make the stuff and then be able to sell it, and then like you sell it for a higher price. But so it's just like the reason why this is relevant is the whole point of being an investment banker. Like a big part of the job is helping businesses raise capital, right? So you can probably come full circle later on in the answer and talk about how like this basically planted the seed for you, and then like later on as you got older and you got to college and you started taking classes or doing internships and whatnot, and then you discovered investment banking, you're like, oh wow, this is like such an impactful uh, career because I
Mhm.
get to help all these other companies um, do something really, really important, which is like keep the lights on, right? So you could do something like that, maybe,
Mhm.
you know.
Yep.
Um, and so, we'll also have to like you have to time your answer like when you're done with the whole thing, like just
Mhm.
practice delivering it and see how long it is. Like ideally, you keep it to like maybe 2 minutes.
Okay.
3 minutes, I think it's okay, but it's like then your answer has to be really good, or else it gets a bit long. But if it's too long, then I would say we can probably like even trim this down a little bit more, because
Okay.
like you kind of gave like two things here. One is like just being an immigrant child and like having the work ethic, and then the second thing is like kind of this
Yeah.
being business minded thing, and we might just pick and choose and take just one out of the two, right?
Okay.
Or you might even be able to combine it. Like you might be able to just take just this example and still weave in the work ethic aspect, which is really what you're trying to convey here,
Mhm.
right? So does that make sense? So
Yeah.
if we need to save some time, we can cut.
Okay.
So I'm gonna say, um, where's the here we go. Potentially cut one out of the two if the answer ends up being two. Yeah, I'm gonna do that. Okay. All right. So then I went on to take a gap year after high school where I volunteered in Kenya. We learned and taught communities and schools how to stretch their budget and better run programs. Uh, what kind of programs are you talking about?
Um, well, stretch their budget. Well, I'm thinking like, well, they had like within their own school, they were trying to like fund like um like clothes for like the kids that they had. So they kind of had, I don't know if I would necessarily then call it a program, but like they would try to do different funding for different activities. So they would like try to have extra budget to like be able to like buy like shirts for everyone or buy like shoes for everyone, or like they had a whole like project where they wanted to like reinstall like a whole bathroom service, or like like different projects, maybe better like
So
better
these are
start
like kind of like community service, charity work, basically that they were doing.
kind of, yeah, but within like their own school.
Hmm. Okay. Yeah, I mean, like just this. This is kind of vague, right?
Yeah, how to stretch their budget
So,
and
um,
organize. Well, okay, because it's funding. um
yeah. So maybe it's like we taught communities and schools how to stretch their budget and you know but like, do a better job of allocating the
The
limited capital.
resource, yeah.
Yeah, do a better job of allocating the limited capital they have to various competing priorities. I don't know, something like
Okay.
that. How to stretch their budget and do a better job of allocating the limited capital they had to various competing priorities. Really enjoy working in an environment where I was constantly learning and felt like I was being able to make such a strong impact. This experience, I learned that I really enjoyed working in an environment. We can even say I learned that one, I really enjoy working in an environment where I was constantly learning. And two, it felt really good to be able to make such a strong impact through my work. Right. So I think like if here you talked about, your spark, the spark to your interest in finance, and here you talked about, hey, I learned that one, I want to work in an environment where I get to learn a lot, and two,
Mhm.
I want my work to actually make a difference, right? Then I think like in your last paragraph is kind of when you tie it all together, right?
Yeah.
So for, from these experiences, and that was your gap year after high school. So going into college, um, I I started to think about what careers would allow me to uh, have allow me to not only uh, with money, but also learn a lot while making a big impact at the same time. And I don't know how you found out about investment managers, like through talking to upperclassmen or whatever, right? But let's just pretend for a second it's like through many conversations with upperclassmen and investment banking. I realized that investment banking was a perfect, the perfect fit that I was looking for. Right. So now I'm like, what I'm doing is I'm just tying, I'm almost like tying everything we've done up to this point together and explaining like, here's how I got to the point in my education where I said, okay, I want to do investment banking, and I'm going to spend the rest of the answer talking about since then these are the things that I've done to make myself more qualified for a role like investment banking. Right? Does that make
Mhm.
sense?
Yep.
So I began classes from home. This is like kind of irrelevant. Right? I don't think they really need to know that.
Mm.
Right? Began looking for remote finance related experiences. I don't think you need to emphasize that some of these internships that you've done have been remote. In fact, I personally don't bring that up unless they ask, because sometimes people think like, oh, if it's a remote internship, then it's like, I don't know, like cheapens it or whatever. Right.
Okay.
So, So you can just say, I immediately began looking for finance internships to help me learn more about this career path. I've since taken on 2 small private equity analyst internships with different search funds. Have really enjoyed a variety of industries I learned about, how to project. You're talking about like projecting at like building projections. Is that what you're trying to
Yeah.
say? How to project out a company's financials and I've really enjoyed the variety of industries. What was that? I really enjoy learning about
Or like market research, would that be better? Doing market research?
learning about conducting market research, building out financial projections, and evaluating businesses from an investor's point of view. Right. So then we probably don't need this anymore. I've been specifically really attracted to M&A side. So this, like, this we kind of already set up here, right? So we don't really need it anymore. And then like, if you're really attracted to M&A side, I think it depends. You might not want to say this. It depends on the firm that you're interviewing with. Like if you're interviewing with an elite boutique and they only do M&A, then I think it's fine to say this, right? If you're interviewing with like a bulge bracket bank and you don't know that you're going to end up on the M&A side of things, then you don't want to like limit yourself. Does that make sense? So I would say I'm now looking to take the skills I've acquired and hoping to not looking to take the skills I've acquired, hoping to apply it. During my next. All right, so I'm excited. Something like that.
Okay.
Does that make sense? So I mean, like, I think most of it is good. It's just like making the minor refinements to make it flow better a little bit, right?
Yeah.
Any questions about this?
No.
Okay.
No. I think something that I keep going back to, which is also in my resume, is just how we go into like how because you've always said you have to be careful with what you say because it's kind of an invitation for them to ask you about it. So when I say like finance projections and so, I think it's something I need to like think about how I would word if they say, so what exactly did you do? Or like on the resume, when we outlined it, we said like doing like a debt pay down of LBOs. So definitely like, I don't know if that's an invitation for me to like be roasted on my technicals or for them to be like, exactly how does that work, you know?
Yeah, it could be. It could be. So, you don't have to say this part, right? You can swap this out for anything else that you're more comfortable talking about. So, whatever I put here, this is not set in stone. Could just be a placeholder. Just definitely think about like what you want to keep in versus take out.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Okay, so that's that question. Let's talk about the second one, right? So why investment banking? So investment banking really interests me because of changing learning opportunities, working environment I feel I'm having an impact in, and being surrounded by such talented and ambitious individuals. So obviously, like, you're just following the framework here, which is good, right? Like, you're signposting and then you kind of like elaborate on each of the three reasons that you provided, right? I think the thing I'll say here is just on signposting, you want to be more succinct with your signpost. So like I would shorten all this. I would just say investment banking really interests me because um, instead of saying really interests me, I would just have even more conviction. Like I would say investment banking is where I want to start my career. Like that sounds more definitive than,
Yeah.
oh, this is interesting to me, right? So investment banking is where I want to start my career because of the learning opportunity, um, the impact, the impactful work, and um, the team environment. Okay. Like basically, I'm trying to say each of these things in just like 2 or 3 words.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's a lot more concise. And then you can dive into what each of these things are, right? So, like for the first one, for learning opportunities. So, in investment banking, you can work with different industries and clients, which I think provides great opportunity to learn in all different areas in different areas and become a well-rounded individual. Um, I'm really attracted to how you are in an environment where work is constantly changing. And as MD Israel Martinez emphasized, I mean, one of his favorite parts about working at IB after over a decade is that no one day is the same. And I've always wanted to steer from a routine like a job. I have always wanted to steer from a routine like a job. I know this sentence is kind of weird.
Steer away, but yeah, maybe not necessary.
Yeah. I mean, I get what you're trying to say, but I think it's
Mhm.
just kind of phrased a little bit. Could be phrased better, but I think I might like reorganize this a little bit. So I don't know like what event this was at, right? Uh,
Mhm.
I might just leave with this. So I would say like um, I think investment banking provides first and foremost. Right. I also like saying like first and foremost, right? Like secondly. So this is like just again makes it more clear like where in my answer I am at, right? Because you signposted three things. So then it's like first, secondly, and then you said finally here, right? Which is fine. Or you can say last but not least or whatever. It doesn't matter, right? But first and foremost, thinking investment banking provides the best learning opportunity, or you can even say the steepest learning curve out of all the careers that possibly pursue. I attended XYZ event. I don't know what the event was, but right.
The
Um,
diversity software. Yeah. Okay. I can put that. Yeah.
yeah, but I when I attended XYZ event, I heard, managing director Israel Martinez talk about, or actually you can say, told us that his favorite part Working IB after over a decade is that no one day is the same. That really left a strong impression on me. Oops. As I have always wanted career that challenge me in different ways so that I can develop. I feel like I'm not wording this very well. That left a strong impression on me as I've always wanted a career that would challenge me in different ways. Especially early on in my career when I'm trying to get experience and learn as much as I can. Something like that. First and foremost, I think investment provides the steepest learning curve out of all the careers I could possibly pursue. When I attended whatever diversity event, managing director Ezra Martinez told us that his favorite part about working in investment banking after over a decade is that no one day is the same. That really left a strong impression on me as I've always wanted a career that would constantly challenge me in different ways, especially early on in my career. I guess we say career twice. I always wanted a job that will constantly challenge me in different ways, especially early on in my career. Just a little less redundant, right? Especially early on in my career when I'm trying to get a well-rounded experience and learn as much as I can. So that's like the first point, right? Secondly, from my volunteering experience in Kenya, I think finding intrinsic value and knowing you are making an impact on improving others' lives is important in what you do. I feel like this is kind of like a little bit convoluted. Finding intrinsic value and knowing, I would just say like, from my volunteering experience in Kenya, my biggest takeaway was the importance of finding meaning and impact in the work that I do. In banking, you can work on in investment banking. I'd get to work on such important deals and help clients make some of the most important decisions in their businesses. It's not really their personal lives, right? Investment banking, I get to work on such important deals. Whether it's raising large amounts of capital or advising on a highly strategic acquisition. These are some of the most important decisions that our clients will ever make, and it's hard to find a more impactful job for someone who's you know, fresh out of college. Something like that, right? Finally, growing up, I've always been dedicated to soccer and being part of team sports. Finally, growing up, I played soccer competitively and have always been a part of team sports. I really value communication and teamwork. Banking provides an amazing opportunity to work and learn from intelligent and experienced individuals. I look forward to a career where the people have high expectations for me, and I know working with such well-rounded professionals will have a huge impact on my learning development from the start.
Maybe more about the close community that you make when you work on working on things.
I think the parallels that you can draw between uh, the parallels that you can draw between banking and sports is like working in a team, and it's a competitive environment, and you're kind of like trying to accomplish like a common goal.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's like because different banks are basically kind of like sports teams, and they're competing against each other to try to win the deals and whatnot, right? And then also like, yeah, being able to become a better player yourself if you are surrounded with other players on your team who are really good or like better than you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So usually those are like kind of the parallels that you're trying to touch on. So I would say, and we just have to phrase it correctly, right? Always been a part of team sports. I really miss being in that type of competitive team environment where you're working really hard together towards a common goal, right? I also know from firsthand experience the value of surrounding myself with um, people who are, uh, you know, people who are better than me, so that I can learn from them and improve myself in the process, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where you're working really hard together toward a common goal, and camaraderie that results from it, right? I also know from firsthand experience the value of surrounding myself with people who are better than me, so that I can learn from them and improve myself in the process. And then you just need like a closing sentence, right? For these reasons, I believe investment banking is the best place for me to start my career. Something like that.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure. I remember when I first went through this in your modules, it seemed very robotic, where I kept thinking like it sounds weird to talk like this.
Yeah.
But I talked to somebody like 2 days ago, and clearly like they had prepared their behaviorals, and it was so clear to understand their whole behavioral outline that it was just such a clear example of this is really how you have to do it.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it might feel robotic. And look, I'm not saying you have to say these answers verbatim, right? Like you can paraphrase and try to like make it into your own voice, because you don't want to feel like fake, right? Or you don't want to feel like you're saying things that you would typically never say, because then like the answer is not going to come across as like genuine. And that's like honestly the most important thing. So I think like, even though I'm rewriting this for you, the point is not for you to go back and memorize the paragraphs word for word, and then like, oh, if you are off by one word here and one word there, then like the answer's not good. Like that's not the point, right? But the point is like to understand the rationale behind why we're changing what we're changing, and how we're tweaking certain things, and how we're maybe like sometimes it's like deleting stuff because it's not necessary, or adding certain things in to make it more complete, or other times it's like we're just changing the ordering or the sequence of things to make it flow better. And then like once you understand that, then like just following the framework, like this is like basically following exactly the framework that we taught, right? Like you signpost your three reasons, you elaborate on reason one, elaborate on reason two, elaborate on reason three, closing sentence, right? So it's like, even in a higher view, like if you get a question like this, like you don't have to memorize this, but you know what your three reasons are, right? Which is learning opportunity, impactful work, and a team environment. And then you know the framework, and then you just, it's plug and play, right? Does that make sense? I know like the thing that I changed here, it actually is like I'm saying the exact same things that you already said in the first place, right? Like I didn't really add anything new. I just reworded it so that we're more clear and more explicit about tying this example back to banking, right? You see what I'm saying? Like,
Yes.
there's a lot of these answers, like what you want to do is, even if it might seem obvious, you want to tie it back to banking for them, you know, like
Yeah.
even here, like we're tying your Kenya experience back to banking, right? Like, so as much as you can, you want to tie the answers back to banking so that it makes more sense for the interviewer. Cool.
Yes.
Okay. All right. So why JP Morgan? Let's do one more, and then I'll probably have to send you comments on the rest like separately later. Okay, just because do have another meeting that I have to run to. But but these are the three most important questions, right? Which is what we call the guarantee questions: is tell me about yourself, walk me through your resume, why banking, why JP Morgan, right? So let's make sure we at least cover those three. So there are a lot of things that draw me to JP Morgan, but the most important ones are the people, the attention to career development, and its position as a global leader. Okay. Yeah, I think this one you did a better job here, signpost. I think this is like concise enough, so we'll just leave it as is. I think the environment you work in is important because essentially you're learning every day from the people around you. Consider myself an ambitious person who wants to work for an organization where I'll be constantly challenged and pushing my role. It's important for me to grow and develop personally and professionally, and this is a place I will be surrounded by like-minded people. From the events and people I've talked to, such as XYZ, everyone emphasizes how much they enjoy going to work because of the people they work with and feel that they're able to bring their best energy every day. Everyone I've talked to seems so approachable, and JP Morgan seems like a place I would enjoy going to work in every day. Okay, so this part is like, I think a little bit rambly.
Yeah.
Right. And then there's
Yeah.
like some redundant stuff here when you actually read it out loud. It's just like, um, yeah, like something every day, going to work
Yeah.
every day, right? So we just gotta clean it up. And then I think also the biggest thing for me is like it's a little bit too vague.
Yeah.
Like you're speaking in a lot of generalities, like you know, you're learning every day from the people around you. Like I'll be constantly challenged and pushed, and I want to grow personally and professionally and be surrounded by like-minded people. Like there's a lot of these superlatives that are like, okay, well, I could, especially for this question for why JP Morgan, like most of the investment banks out there are kind of all very similar.
Yeah.
Right. And so the trickiest part about this question is a lot of the things that you say, like I can take that exact answer and then plug it in for why Goldman Sachs instead, or why Morgan Stanley instead? And this answer would be exactly the same, right? And if that happens, then you probably haven't done a very good job, because the banker's like, well, I haven't heard you tell me anything that is actually like just unique to our bank, right?
Yeah.
So I think what you want to do is, um, especially the section where you're talking about the people, I think it's fine to lead with the people, right? And it's like, first and foremost, I think um, the people I get to work with is the number one consideration for um, when it comes to choosing which investment bank like to work for, right? And then like you can explain why that is, right?
Yeah.
Part of
Because
that.
I'm thinking maybe, well, so the two things that I'm thinking is the amount of feedback you got, and then they also talked about how like approachable like MDs or directors are in giving feedback. You don't feel intimidated. So maybe that's more specific.
So personally, like for the people part, I would say like, it's like one, because you spend so much time with these people,
Mhm.
right? More than even your like friends and family, right? So that it's like important that you like these people and get along, right? And then two is like these are the people that you are going to be learning from, right? So this is like you want to like the people, and this is like you want to work with high caliber people, right? And then like um I think you should like name drop specific people at JP Morgan that you've spoken with who have talked about these two things above. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So it's like I spoke to XYZ person, and then like maybe they told you about how great the camaraderie is, right?
Mhm.
And maybe they give you an example of like something that they do together as coworkers. And that sounds amazing to you, right? And then like the second part is like maybe you spoke to, I don't know, a different analyst or whatever, and they talked about like how much they've been able to learn from working with, this team or that person or this MD or on this deal, like whatever, right? But the point is you have to name drop specific people, from JP Morgan, because that's what's going to make this answer unique to JP Morgan. And I can't just take this and say, oh, this also applies to Goldman Sachs, right? Does that make sense?
Mhm.
So I know I didn't write it out for you, but I'm just like gave you the outline here. I will go and like rework that,
Okay.
right? I'm just gonna leave this here. Like we're probably not gonna use this, right? I'm just gonna highlight that in red. Um, Also very attracted to JP Morgan because how much they value career development. It seems a great emphasis on long-term growth, having people stay at the firm well into their careers. Most people I've interacted with have stayed at the firm for many years because they have felt so supported from the moment they joined. I think it's important to find a company that promotes growth and cares about individuals. I know I will be able to learn regardless of where I am in my career, and will always have much to look forward to and room to improve. So I would say like similar idea here, which is this seems to be great in the long-term growth and having people stay at the firm well into their careers. Most people I've interacted with, such as who, right? I would just be more specific, right? Um, Now you can say I've interacted with multiple bankers at JP Morgan,
Mhm.
stayed at the firm for many years, including X, Y, Z person, amongst many others, right? All of them have told me that JP Morgan is, you know, whatever these other nice things you want to say about them. So it's almost like the key to this answer, honestly, is instead of saying all of these things from your own point of view, say it from their point of view. Just tell them what these employees have already told you, why this firm is great, and just like regurgitate it back to them.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think my only three questions would be, it sounds like for everyone, I'm like referring to a person. Is there such thing as like over referring to people?
Um, no, I don't
No,
think so.
the more, okay, yeah, okay,
Just shows that you've talked to a lot of people at this firm, which is like you've done your
okay,
homework. I don't know why that would be a bad thing,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
Um, and then like this thing in terms of like, you know,
yeah,
JP Morgan's position as a global leader, um, I think like we could do a little bit better.
yeah,
Right. So like this is like too vague, right? Like,
yeah,
but instead, if we were like, um, you know, for example, you can talk about how, you know, JP Morgan is a full service investment bank, right?
mhm,
Meaning, you know, they cover all industries and all products, right? Why is this noteworthy? Because you're eliminating the elite boutiques,
yeah,
right? Because
mhm,
but for like the why our bank question, you want to like it's also partially answering like why not all these other great banks? Why not
yeah,
Evercore? Why not Centerview? Why not Lazard Moelis, Guggenheim, Perella, Weinberg, blah blah blah? Well, it's like those guys only work on one thing, which is M&A,
mhm,
and that's not what I want, right?
yeah,
This goes back to earlier where I said like you have that answer where you said, you know, I'm especially interested in M&A. Like I probably wouldn't use that for a bank like JP Morgan because you might
yeah,
not end up on the M&A team, right? Um, what else can you say? You can also say like not only that, I'm pretty sure too, like specific to uh, JP Morgan especially, if I look up the league tables, Financial Times league
I
table.
do think they came out on top now lately.
Um,
I think I heard some podcast that they were doing the best. Yeah.
so I'm
No.
looking it up right now. Okay, so here we go. So let me share this screen. Where is it? Can you see this?
Yes.
So this is like the Financial Times. They have like a league table section.
Mhm,
So if I go to like banking leaders tab, right? Like if you look at it globally in investment banking, year to date in 2021, JP Morgan is the leader in terms of fees. Goldman Sachs is strongest in M&A and equity, but JP Morgan is strongest in debt and loans, whatever, that's
mhm,
fine. If they break it down by region, JP Morgan is top there. But also like if you break it down by like different industry groups, you know, JP Morgan is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I mean, it's yeah, it's strong. It's the strongest across a lot of different verticals,
mhm.
right? So you can say that they're a global leader, but I think what would be more credible is if you actually back that up
Yeah.
with the numbers, right? So like if you
Yeah.
said, like if we actually cited this and we actually said like, you know, 2021 year to date, you know that JPM is
Yeah.
has generated the highest fees globally for investment banking, right? So that's this right here. It's worth
Mhm,
mentioning. Um, highest in America and also highest across like multiple industries, coverage groups, including healthcare, industrials, you know, energy and power, retail, consumer, real estate, and media and entertainment, right?
mhm.
So basically this, like this, you know, tells me that um, no matter what group I end up in at JP Morgan, I know I will have a great experience no matter what, right? Because out of a lot of these other banks, it's like you might end up in a good group or you might in a bad group. You get hired in as a generalist and then you have to go through placement day and you don't really know what group you're going to end up in. And that's kind of scary, right? At a firm like JP Morgan, you don't have to worry about that because all of their groups are good, right?
Yeah.
And then you have a closing sentence here, which is fine as is, right? So that's kind of how I will work, rework this third one. And then in terms of like, I think in terms of like ordering, I might also rearrange this. Like you should play with the sequencing of the 3 reasons to see like what flows the best. I
Okay.
suspect that it might flow better if you say, if you start with this current, what is currently the 3rd reason. So you have to change like the order of your signposting too, but talk about like how strong JP Morgan is across the board, right? Then talk about, I'm trying to think these other two. Um, then I might talk about the career development second, and then I think like I might save like the people thing for last. I don't know. Like I usually kind of like ending on the people point, um, but we can play around with it to see like what we think sounds the best.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure. That helps so much. If when I do this part for the boutiques, for example, with this, would you suggest like to compare them between boutiques?
Compare what?
Like to when I talk about their stats, like I say this boutique stands out because of this, or to compare it to like I want a boutique rather than a bulge bracket because.
Yeah, you're gonna have to adapt your answers then, right? Because like
Yeah.
if you're like if I were interviewing with an elite boutique, then I would probably say the opposite, right? Because it's not like one's better than the other. It's just all
Yeah.
personal preference. So with a boutique, I might talk about how like I am the most interested in M&A. That might be one of my 3 reasons, right? And that eliminates kind of like all the bulge bracket banks because when you go to a bulge bracket bank, you might not work on M&A. You might end up in a capital markets group or any of these other groups, right? So that could be one of my reasons there. And then like honestly, like the people reason almost never changes. Like you're always going to be able to say something nice about the people, and you know you spoke to XYZ person and they told you this and that, right? And then like you know the learning opportunity usually like that kind of applies no matter what as well. So like I think like a lot of these reasons sometimes can be recycled no matter who the bank is.
Okay.
But ideally you always want to have at least like 1 or 2 reasons that are like more specific to the type of firm it is, right? Whether
Okay.
it's a bulge bracket or a boutique or middle market, or maybe it's a firm that focuses on a specific industry, right? Like, you know, it's just like that's where we kind of adapt the answer,
Yeah.
but we can work through that for, you know, each bank individually as you're applying to them.
Okay. 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 I think maybe 2 more questions would be for the people, because I remember from the contact log, for example, my reaching out was very general at the beginning, and then I narrowed it down to people that were in investment banking. So for example, for here, when I reference to people, for example, like at these events, it was somebody from, asset management that spoke. Would that be okay to refer to somebody as that, or would that just kind of throw it off?
Um, I think it's so they were at this diversity event that
Yeah, because it was like different divisions speaking. I
yeah,
applied for the corporate finance and investment banking one, but like everyone spoke.
yeah. I think that's fine. I
Yeah.
mean, it's the exact same event that you're applying through,
Mm-hmm.
and that person happened to be the speaker, so it's fine, right? And you know, like the question is why JP Morgan is not why
Yeah.
banking. I mean, obviously, like all else equal, ideally, if your examples could be from actual investment bankers, and I would say that's like even better. But I don't think it's a huge deal in this case.
Okay.
Yeah. And did you have another one? You said you had 2 questions.
Yeah, I did, but I think now that I think about it, I think it was just in terms of the networking part. So I did narrow it a lot down to investment banking.
Yeah.
Most of the people I've reached out to, there's just been a couple of occasions where they've been out of investment banking, but when I've talked to them, I've generalized that I'm interested in finance. That's why I'm talking to them. But I'm very interested in investment banking. So the last time they were like, I can direct you to somebody that's in that. So that's what I was just gonna ask you if that's a waste of time or if that's like something that is fine to like reach out to general people as well.
No, it's fine. I think like, look, obviously if you go direct to someone who's still in investment banking, it's one less step,
Yeah.
right? Because ideally they're already at the firm. If they like you enough and they're willing to help you, then they'll just help you, right? If you talk to someone who's not at the bank anymore, they used to be in banking and now they're doing something else, um, then they're not going to be able to like directly help you get into the interview process at that firm. But then the best outcome you can get from that relationship is what you just said, which is for them to introduce you to
Mhm.
all the friends that they still have who are still in banking, right?
Mhm.
And so it's not a waste of time.
Yeah.
It's just one extra step,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
I'm not saying don't do it at all, right? But I think
Mhm.
like if you had to choose between two different people and you're tight on time, then usually I would go for the more direct one,
The
right?
more, yeah.
But if you're
Yeah.
not constrained on time, then like yeah, do both and just get as many contacts as you can, right?
Possible. Okay.
Sometimes like one person will give you multiple contacts, so it
Yeah.
actually like will help you
Yeah.
expand your network a lot, right? It
Yeah.
just comes down to how much they like you and how much they want to
Yeah.
go out of their way to help you.
Okay. Okay.
Cool.
Oh, and I think one last thing is something, okay, this is something I've been meaning to ask you. I always, whenever I ask them, like, whenever they start telling me about their whole career, and I always have this where they tell me about their whole career, and then there's this awkward stop where I don't know what to say, like, if to say, oh, that's really impressive, or like, oh, wow, I never know how to like kind of curve that part.
Yeah.
And it's really awkward for me. So I don't know like what you suggest, maybe what is like a good like follow-up after like they've talked about like everything they've done. And then I don't know, like,
Yeah.
you know,
So it depends on what they it depends on what their career has been up to this point.
yeah.
I think what you need to get into a habit of doing is like as people are answering your question, you should be going through the thought exercise in your head in real time. Like, is there anything that he just said that I could ask a follow-up question about?
Mhm.
You don't want to wait until the entire answer he's answered the entire thing, and then at that point start thinking about like, oh, what do I ask next? Because then that's when it gets awkward, right? And so like as people are talking about it, you're listening very intently and actively and asking yourself like is there anything I can ask, right? And usually the questions that you would ask are like why questions or like how questions. Those are the best questions, right? You
Mhm.
don't want because those are more open ended and get them
Yeah.
talking more versus like the what question,
Yeah.
right? And then so if you just think like if you just always start with why or how, it's like, oh, why did you decide? So why did you go? Why did you decide to go from this place to this place? Or
Mhm.
like, let's say like someone I don't know went from one bank to another, right? At some point in their career, why did you decide to go from I don't know Citi to Bank of America?
Yeah.
Or or maybe like a lot of people leave banking after 2 years, right?
Yeah.
And maybe this person didn't leave banking; they clearly stayed on, and now they're more senior. So it's like, I know most people they don't stay in banking beyond their analyst years. Like, what made you want to stay on in this career for such a long time?
Mhm.
Right? Like, I could ask that, right? Or maybe they didn't do banking before before business school, and then they got an MBA, and then they came into banking after business school. That's a very common profile too,
Yeah.
right? So then you might ask them like, what made you want to leave X to come to banking, or like,
Mhm.
um, what would you say is the biggest difference between working in whatever their previous job was versus working in banking now,
Yeah.
right? Um, so it's just like it really just so it's not predetermined.
Mhm.
right? I can't give you like a list of questions like, oh,
Mm.
ask these, but it's more the framework behind it, which is take whatever it is that they're saying and then ask them either why they did it or how they did it, right?
Yeah.
Oh, so you made the transition from, uh, well, let's say like they've been promoted for like multiple times. They started out as an analyst, now they're a managing director, right? Um, what do you think it is that made you so successful in this career? Because so many people like come into banking, but obviously a very small percentage of people ever make it all the way to the top to like the managing director level, right?
Hmm.
So like, what do you think it is that you did that allow you to be so successful? Like that would be a great question, right? Or like, um, how do you think, um, or like, what do you think? Uh, what are some of the things that you had to learn from scratch along the way uh,
Hmm.
as you progress through your career, right? Like, so for example, because like the even though you're still doing investment banking, your job as an analyst is different from your role as an associate, which is different from your role as a VP, which is different from your role as an MD. Like as an MD, it's basically a sales job, right? You probably never ever touch Excel, right? As an analyst, all you do is touch Excel and PowerPoint. You don't have to sell anything, right? And so it's like two totally different skill sets. And so like actually along the way, you have to learn a lot of different things. And so you can ask them about that, right? And that's actually like another pretty like I would say insightful and perceptive question, right?
Hmm.
Or like, um, obviously you've been in banking for 10 years, uh, and you've probably worked with so many classes of analysts during that time, right? And
Yeah.
so like in your experience, like what is like one thing that all of your favorite analysts have in common?
Hmm.
What is one commonality that all the best analysts always have, right? Or like what separates, in your experience, what separates a really great analyst from just okay analysts,
Yeah.
right? I mean, it could be whatever, but it's like the point is you have to adapt these questions based on their background and it has to make sense within the context of what they've done,
Yeah.
right?
Okay.
But if you
Yes.
if you think about what these questions should be as they're giving their answers, that's going to give you more time to
Hmm.
come up with the questions,
Yeah.
right?
No, definitely. That helps a lot.
Cool. Any other questions?
No, I think that's pretty much it. Maybe last really quick suggestion was for the search funder I'm working with. It's basically three guys, and I know they're very well connected with bankers because they've told me. But they've always said they know I want to go into investment banking probably, and they've basically put it out there. We're like, if you need to talk to anybody, we can introduce you to people. It's been very interesting to see how they work together, which is great. So I know it's an opportunity to take. I just don't know how to approach it in a way where I'm like, if they're like, if you want to talk to anybody specific in this field at this place. So I want to take advantage of it, but in the best calculated way. So I don't know if that's something where I'd be like, oh, do you know anybody that works at this place or this place? Or be like, do you know any investment bankers? Or do you know anybody that's in this and this? Like, how do you think is the best way to approach that?
So they've already told you that they would be happy to connect you with people in banking.
Yes.
Okay. So yeah, you should absolutely take them up on it. Like, don't be shy about it. Uh,
Mhm.
if you're just asking like, how specific can I be about my asks?
Yeah, I don't, I like, how would I go? Would you say, for example, if I'm doing this right now, would you suggest saying just investment bankers or to say like, oh, do you know anybody at JP Morgan? I'm looking into like these recruiting events. Is there anyone around that? Because I feel like that can be like, no, we don't know anybody at JP Morgan.
Right. Um, I think it depends on your relationship with them.
Yeah.
Um, the stronger your relationship with these guys, the more they'd be willing to go out of their way to help you,
Yeah.
right? Hopefully you've been doing a good job for them during the internship, so they want to
They're
reciprocate.
really, really nice. Yeah.
Yeah. So, um, I mean, one thing you can do is just ask them up front, like, "Hey, I know that you guys offered to make introductions for me to different people within investment banking last time. Super grateful for that, obviously. just wondering, like, what's the best way for us to go about that? Like, would you prefer that, I do some research on my own and gave you like a more targeted list of firms or bankers that I would like to talk to,
Mhm.
or like, do do you have like already have people in mind that you want to introduce me to, and you just want to do it that way, right? I
Yeah.
think like you just ask them for their preference, and they might be like, they might tell you that, hey, let's do whatever you think will be most helpful, right? Because
Yeah.
like what you could even do is like you could go look up all of their LinkedIn connections,
Yeah.
right? And see like who do they know at every single bank.
Hmm.
And then like you could give them like a list, like, hey, here's a list of your contacts that I would love an introduction to. That's like the most extreme case, right? Um, and then like the other end of the spectrum would just be like, they just introduce you to whoever they want, and it ends up being like one
Yeah.
people, and then that's it. And obviously, you will get more out of the first scenario than the second scenario, and then there's like everything in between, right? But I don't know what they're willing to do. But I think if you ask them for permission
Yes.
and you like give them like a multiple choice where like at least one of the options is like the option that you prefer, so that because they might not even think about that, right? But if you at least like bring it up, then they might be open to it once you pointed out that that is something you could do, right? Does that make sense?
Yes.
And of course, if they're not willing to do that, then they'll just say no, right? Like it didn't hurt by asking nicely, right?
Okay. Yeah. No, yeah. I told them I would follow up with them and I was definitely interested, but I wanted to consult with you just because I couldn't think of anything right off when they told me that. But yeah, they're
Yeah,
right.
I don't know what their LinkedIn profile setting is like.
Yeah.
I think some people allow you to see who their connections are, some people don't.
Hmm.
If they do allow it, like it's public, then I would like even go and do some research first before
Yeah.
you need to ask. Just like, hey, here are the people that they know, because like, you know, I don't know how long it's been since they've been out of banking, but like most of the people, like their networks will be clustered at like
Yeah.
certain banks the most, like whatever banks they worked at, right?
Hmm.
Of course, they'll still know people from other banks, but like I knew the most people from DB and MS, but like now a lot of those people have spread out to all these different banks, and so they're kind of like, you know, everywhere. But if you had talked to me like 2 years after I quit banking or something, like most of the people that I would be able to introduce you probably would have been at those two banks.
Yeah.
Right? So it's
Okay.
also good to know that because you might adjust what you ask for, right?
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Cool. All right, so I will finish looking through like kind of the rest of that stuff, and then I'll just like give you comments on those separately. But at least for these first three, I'll send you back the draft that we worked on today first, and then let's just continue working through these questions, um, so that you can take your hire as quickly as possible. Also, just like we talked about, reach out to them and see if you can find out whether there's an actual deadline or not. So if
Hmm.
there is, like definitely let me know what it is so that we can kind of stay on top of it. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. So for the next few behaviorals, definitely before Monday, is there a specific date you prefer to have them based on your time?
I think just,
As
I mean,
possible.
honestly, it's just the sooner the better,
Yes.
So,
Okay.
yeah.
Probably over the weekend. Yeah.
Okay. Cool. All right, Shimona.
Friday.
Good
Okay.
session, and I'll talk to you soon.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Alrighty. Bye. Thank you for tuning in. If you enjoyed the content, please subscribe to our channel or podcast so that you can get notified of all of our future episodes as well. If you'd like to apply to work with us so that we can help you in a similar way, feel free to reach out to our team at www.wallstreetmastermind.com/apply. The street is abbreviated to ST, so it's wallstmastermind.com/apply. Talk soon.